Emily always thought her marriage would be enough. A comfortable home, stability, a partner who was never unkind. But lately, everything felt hollow. David had changed, or maybe he had just stopped pretending. He no longer looked at her like he used to. Conversations were transactional. Dinners were quiet. He was always buried in work, or away, unreachable. Emily had memorized the sound of silence. She used to wait for him. Then, she stopped expecting. It was during one of those long, unremarkable evenings that she first noticed Jake. He worked at the lounge near her office, a place she started visiting for no good reason. The first time, he served her a glass of wine with a half-smile that stayed a little too long. She told herself it was nothing. The second time, he remembered her drink. The third, he sat across from her after closing, joking about how lonely the world could be if you let it. His charm was casual but exact. The kind that disarmed. Emily laughed like she hadn't in months. He didn't ask about David. He didn't need to. She felt seen, in a way that made her uncomfortable and alive at the same time. It started with a kiss. The kind you don't plan, that just pulls you forward until your conscience collapses. It was quick and clumsy, in the back hallway behind the bar, her heart slamming against her ribs. She ran out immediately afterward, breathless, guilt thick in her throat. She didn't sleep that night. David was home, already asleep on his side of the bed, unaware. He didn't notice her trembling fingers or the way she avoided eye contact over coffee, but she went back. Of course, she did. There was something about Jake that made her forget what she was risking. They met again the next week. This time, she didn't run. He undressed her with urgency, but also care, like he knew how fragile she was beneath the surface. It was messy. Reckless. Real. Afterward, wrapped in sheets that weren't her own, she stared at the ceiling and waited for regret to settle. It didn't. Not immediately. Later that day, back home, Emily sat across from David at the dining table. He asked about her day, eyes still glued to his phone. She told him it was fine. He nodded. The room felt colder than usual. Sophia called the next morning. Her voice was sharp, curious. She wanted to have coffee. Emily hesitated. Sophia always asked too many questions. At the cafe, she watched Emily with narrowed eyes, leaning in too close. "You seem different," she said casually, stirring her drink. "New perfume?" Emily shook her head. "Just tired, I guess." Sophia smiled too tightly. "You'd tell me if something was going on, right?" Emily changed the subject. The next time with Jake was in his car, parked in an alley behind a closed bookstore. It was rushed, frantic, laced with adrenaline. They didn't speak much, just movements, hands, gasps. The risk made it hotter, and more terrifying. She couldn't stop shaking afterward. That night, as Emily climbed into bed, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Her lips still looked bruised from his kiss. David mumbled goodnight without turning toward her. For the first time, she wondered if he knew. If he even cared. The following weekend, Emily hosted a dinner party. The Bennetts from next door came. So did Sophia. Everyone chatted politely over wine and hors d'oeuvres. Emily smiled through it all, masking the storm inside her. At one point, Mrs. Bennett leaned in with a whisper, "I saw someone in your backyard the other night. Around midnight. Tall man. Thought it was odd." Emily's stomach dropped. She forced a laugh. "Probably just the gardener. He's been working odd hours." But Mrs. Bennett just nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. Strange time for gardening. Later, Sophia found her alone in the kitchen. Her gaze lingered too long. "Is everything okay with you and David?" she asked softly. "Why wouldn't it be?" Sophia shrugged. "You're different. Distant. Just, if there's something you need to talk about, I'm here." Emily thanked her, but said nothing. That night, she texted Jake, "We need to be more careful." His reply came quickly. "That's what makes it fun." She stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Something had changed. The thrill wasn't enough anymore. Emily checked the time again. Jake was already 5 minutes late. Her fingers hovered over her phone, but she didn't text. The fewer messages, the better. She scanned the parking lot, pulse quickening when his car finally pulled up. She slipped into the passenger seat without a word. They didn't kiss, didn't speak. The silence between them was heavy, full of urgency. He drove them to the motel on the outskirts of town, the one with no cameras, the one where they didn't use real names. They had stopped pretending it was about anything other than what it was. Inside, it was fast. Desperate. Like both of them knew time was closing in. Emily's hands trembled as she dressed afterward. Jake lit a cigarette, watching her. "You're getting nervous," he said. She didn't answer. Her eyes were on the curtain, the small slit of daylight. She hated how exposed they were. He leaned in, whispered, "We have to be quick. Before someone catches on." David had started asking questions. Subtle ones. Not accusations, but observations. "You've been working late a lot," he'd said over breakfast. "Everything okay?" Emily nodded, careful to keep her tone even. "Just behind on some things." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That night, she found him in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. Though it wasn't on, her phone became a liability. She deleted everything. Texts, call logs, even the contact. She memorized Jake's number, stopped replying immediately. Jake didn't like that. "Are you pulling away from me?" he asked one night. "You're acting different." She told him she was being smart. He didn't understand. He still thought this was a game. Sophia had started appearing more often. Dropping by uninvited. Once, she claimed she was just passing through. Another time, she brought wine, saying she missed their talks. But the way she watched Emily, the way her eyes scanned the room like she was taking notes, Emily knew it wasn't casual. During one visit, Sophia casually mentioned a private investigator she had used when she thought her ex was cheating. "They are more common than you think," she said, smiling. "People use them all the time." The next morning, Emily found herself checking for hidden cameras. She searched behind mirrors, under furniture, even in vents. Her paranoia wasn't unfounded. The Bennetts were always outside. Gardening, walking their dog, pretending to be busy. She caught Mr. Bennett staring at her from his porch one afternoon. He didn't look away when she noticed. He just nodded, slowly, like he knew something. Jake suggested they leave town for a weekend. Just disappear. No questions. She laughed, but her throat tightened. "I can't," she said. "Not like that?" He stepped closer. "You think he doesn't know? You think this ends well?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Emily's nightmares were getting worse. In them, David stood silently beside their bed, watching her sleep. She'd wake up breathless, drenched in sweat, and find him gone. When he returned home from his business trips, he was quieter. He studied her more. He touched her less. Then came the missing earring. It wasn't hers. It was gold, small, with a green stone. Found under the bed, placed on the nightstand by David without a word. She stared at it for minutes before speaking. "It's not mine," she finally said. David nodded. "I know." He didn't ask more. He didn't accuse her. But something in the way he looked at her changed. It was no longer confusion or suspicion. It was certainty. The silence afterward was worse than yelling. She waited for a confrontation that never came. That night, Jake texted again. "Are you sure he doesn't know?" She didn't respond. Later, when she was alone, she remembered the way Sophia had hugged David at the last dinner party. The softness in her voice when she said goodbye. Emily hadn't thought much of it then. Now, it lingered. Jake became impatient. He pushed for more time, more risks, more promises. Emily began pulling back. She stopped meeting him in town. She told him she needed space. He didn't understand. "You wanted this," he snapped during a call. "You came to me." She hung up. There was no more thrill. Only fear. She was being watched. She felt it in the quiet. The unspoken tension between her and David. The strange timing of Sophia's calls. The Bennett's eyes that followed her every step. Emily had no proof, but she didn't need it. Every move had become dangerous, every glance, a trap. Emily stood at the sink, hands submerged in cold water, staring at nothing. The silence in the house had changed, no longer passive, but calculated. She hadn't seen Jake in 2 weeks. Not since the call where he accused her of using him. He was angry. She was tired. He wanted answers. She wanted out. But cutting ties wasn't simple, not anymore. He knew too much. Worse, he felt entitled to her. David's behavior had grown colder, but not chaotic. That terrified her more. He no longer asked where she was going. No longer questioned her late arrivals or sudden errands. He simply watched her. Listened. Smiled without feeling. She felt like a bug under glass, stuttered, contained, waiting to be crushed. There was a stillness to him that made her skin itch. Sophia had gone quiet, too. No more uninvited visits, no check-ins, no thinly veiled questions. Emily should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt surrounded. She didn't know what game was being played anymore, or who was playing it better. She had underestimated everyone. Jake broke the silence with a message, one last time. "You owe me that." She stared at it for a long time. Her thumbs hovered. She typed, deleted, typed again. Then finally, tomorrow. Noon. But it ends there. She chose a neutral place. A short-term rental under a fake name. No connections to either of them. She told herself it would be quick, closure. A clean break. But when she opened the door and saw him, something cracked. He looked tired, rough around the edges. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. She didn't respond. He tried to kiss her, but she stepped back. "I'm not here for that." His face darkened. "So what then? You disappear? Pretend none of this happened? It has to stop, Jake. You said that before. This time I mean it." He paced, agitated. "You used me to feel something. And now that you're done, you just walk away?" She didn't answer. She picked up her bag. "I'm leaving." He blocked the door. "I'm not letting you go like this." Before she could respond, her phone rang. "David," she let it ring. Jake noticed. "Does he know?" "I don't know what he knows." Jake smirked. "He knows. They all know." She pushed past him and left. That night, David was already home. He was sitting in the kitchen, sipping coffee, calm. Her heart thudded. She expected shouting. Instead, he placed a small black box on the table. Inside, a USB drive. "I had someone follow you." She stared at it, frozen. "I've known for a while. I just needed to see what kind of person you really were." Her throat closed. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to be sure. And now I am." He stood. "I'm not angry. I'm done." He walked away, leaving her alone with her guilt and the soft hum of the refrigerator. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She sat there for hours, unmoving. 2 days later, Sophia came by. She didn't knock. She walked in like she belonged there. Emily was on the couch, disheveled. Sophia sat across from her, smiling. "I told him months ago." Emily blinked. "I didn't have to follow you. You were sloppy. He deserved to know." Emily's voice came out thin. "Why?" Sophia tilted her head. "Because he deserves better. And you? You never really appreciated what you had." Emily stood up slowly. "You always wanted him." Sophia didn't deny it. "He's not yours," Emily said. "Maybe not. But he's not yours either." Emily left the house that evening. She didn't take much. Just her car keys and her coat. She drove aimlessly for hours before ending up outside Jake's apartment. His car wasn't there. She waited for a while, then left. She didn't want him anymore. Not really. She wanted what she had ruined to feel whole again. In the days that followed, the silence deepened. David didn't respond to her messages. Sophia's name began appearing more in his world, at work, at social events. The replacement was clear. The erasure, methodical. Emily moved into a small apartment across town. No one knew where she was. She didn't tell them. She filled her days with mindless tasks, avoiding mirrors and photos. The shame lived in her skin. She replayed everything. The first glance at the bar, the first lie, the moment she chose Jake over reason. She thought she was escaping a hollow marriage. Instead, She'd stepped into a void of her own making. One night, weeks later, she received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo, David and Sophia at a charity event, smiling together. Emily stared at it for a long time, then she burned it. Emily's days blurred into a pattern of silence and routine. She no longer checked her phone obsessively. No one was calling. The apartment was smaller than she was used to, but quiet, untouched by memory. She kept the curtains closed. The light felt intrusive. Work became her anchor, strict hours, predictable tasks, no room for reflection. Coworkers noticed her detachment, but no one pried. She was just another woman who smiled without her eyes. Jake tried once more. An email this time, brief, "I'm sorry." She didn't reply. She read it twice, then deleted it. Whatever connection they had was long gone, soured by fear and consequence. She didn't miss him. She missed who she was before him. Before she lost control of her story, her reflection had changed. Her eyes were harder now, mouth set in a permanent half-line. She spoke less, avoided small talk. When people asked about her past, she kept it vague. Things changed, she'd say. I needed a reset. No one pushed further. People rarely want to know the full truth. They prefer neat explanations. David never responded to her final message. I was wrong. I know you won't forgive me. I just needed to say it. No read receipt. No reply. Just silence. A void with his face on it. She learned, painfully, that some bridges don't burn. They vanish, like they were never there. Sophia's name kept showing up online, tagged in photos with David, smiling in carefully lit shots at events. It was never official, never announced, but the implication was loud enough. Emily stopped looking after a while. It was like watching someone step into a life that used to be hers. They wore it well. One afternoon, she ran into Mrs. Bennet in a grocery store aisle. The older woman hesitated, surprised. Emily, she said with polite caution. You've been gone a while. Emily offered a stiff smile. Needed space. Mrs. Bennet nodded slowly. You look thinner. Then, after a pause, he seems happier now. Emily didn't ask who. She didn't need to, her nights were the worst. The stillness stretched too long. She sometimes imagined what she'd say if David were in front of her. Maybe she'd apologize again. Maybe she'd ask if he ever really loved her, or if he had simply grown tired long before she strayed. She'd ask if Sophia had always been waiting in the wings. Or maybe she'd say nothing at all. Maybe that would be enough. She started journaling. Not about the affair, never in detail. Just fragments. Emotions. Guilt. Regret. She wrote one word over and over on a page one night. Why? She didn't have an answer. Occasionally, she thought about who she'd been with Jake. The woman who had taken risks, who had felt wanted, visible. It was brief, but powerful. And stupid. She had convinced herself it was love. It wasn't. It was escape. Jake had simply been the exit door she took without reading the sign above it. Months passed. No dramatic endings. Just distance. Time did what time always does, erased the edges, softened the noise. But not the core. That stayed. Emily learned to live with it. To carry it quietly, without seeking forgiveness. She considered dating again once, but left halfway through the first dinner. She wasn't ready. Or maybe she was too aware now, of how easily people lie to themselves when they crave something more. She didn't trust her own choices. On her birthday, she got a small envelope. No return name, but she recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside was a note. I hope you find peace. You deserve that, at least. It wasn't signed. She didn't need it to be. She folded it carefully, placed it in a drawer. She didn't know what to feel. Maybe it was closure. Maybe it was just pity. But it didn't matter. Emily woke up early the next day, made coffee, and stood by the window. For the first time in months, she opened the curtains. The light poured in, sharp and warm. She closed her eyes and breathed in. She wasn't healed. Not fully. But she wasn't running anymore.